My name is Bob Bolen. I live at 2834 North 300 East in Union Township, Huntington, Indiana. While I have a major stack of things, I'm going to make it real brief. That way everyone can kind of do their own reading. But one of the first things is that we've already kind of touched on is that this type of industrial movement tears communities apart. I'm not mad at any of you at all. I'm not mad. I don't want it. I don't like it. I was, but I prayed about it. But I'm angry at Solar for coming here and really giving us half-truths. So one of the things, especially being politicians, you can understand that there are always two sides to every story, and then there's the truth in there. I was talking to one of the police officers, and he said, well, Bob, you know, when you're in law enforcement, there's always three sides. There's his side, her side, and the truth. So, but this one is kind of the same, that's fitting. But we actually just had a press release done by Paddlefish. And it's very interesting that on the photo that they use, and I've highlighted that for you all, that particular tree is way beyond any ordinance that we have. And I think that is psychological to give the appearance that they're going to really cover this stuff up and do that. Why else would we use a photo that really doesn't fit the ordinance that we have, right? So I'll leave you with those. One of the other things that Paddlefish actually stated in here, and I've highlighted those sections for you. So obviously they talk about the sound of it being a refrigerator. Well, I don't want to step outside my back door to have a cup of coffee in the morning and hear my refrigerator open every day. But the other thing is we talk about, on page 3, they talk about the forms of energy that are subsidized in America, and I would absolutely agree with that. The only difference is that subsidies are in place for other energy sources, but you couldn't do yours without the subsidy. You couldn't even, this wouldn't even be talked about without the subsidy. But the other thing is that as we're talking through there, you know, additionally Trina Rodebush, which was GeneX, who was, I don't know how this all, why it's a tangled web of just madness. She talks about, she explained that the site would have signage required by the county for emergencies posted outside the facility entrance of the public right away. It could also provide a sign describing the community solar field and its name. I personally don't know what relevance having a sign out saying this is the name of the solar field. It says that, let's see, it says that they're going to employ 350 people in Huntington County. Has anybody heard that? Because that's what they say. They said they're going to employ 350 people. That's a lie. That's not true at all. And I think we talked about it already. You mean you're going to hire a company who brings a bunch of subcontractors in? Travelers. 1099s. There's no SUDA being paid. There's no FUTA being paid. There's no benefits applied. These are all short-term, transient. Most of them are going to be construction companies that are willing to do it at the cheapest overall cost. And the cheapest overall cost will always bring unscrupulous people to the community. But to go ahead and put out propaganda that is nowhere even close to remotely being true, that's a sad, sad day. So they talk about the decommissioning in here, and I noticed in the decommissioning, they said they're going to put a decommissioning agreement and security required by the county. Now they're comparing Wells County and Huntington County, so they're going to do both for both counties. What I ask is that we make that public so that we can all take a look at the decommissioning plan and find out exactly what we agree with and don't agree with, because one of the things that I've said, and some of you have heard me say it before, there's not one person in this room today that's smarter than all of us. So when we're all here for the good of the citizens, I think we can go through there and make a really good intellectual conversation of what's good for the community. Now I do know that at the bottom that they put that they signed an agreement with Solar Cycle. They are out of California. They signed an agreement with Solar Cycle Recycling Company to recycle the panels that are damaged or broken during construction. What about after construction? We left that out. That's kind of an important part, paddlefish. We'd like to know that. So Terry, I've got a bunch of comments. I'll leave those for the Planning Commission to review as well. One of the things that we did do as well is we went out and we talked to the fire departments. We thought this probably would have been done with our planning, with the planning board, but that wasn't necessarily the case. So we went to the Markle Fire Department, talked to John Gray. We said, what kind of equipment do you think the department's going to need for this type of a industrial outfit? He said, he doesn't know for sure since there's so many unknowns. Somebody, somewhere, should be having a conversation. He sees fire safety as in project being a major issue, too many unknowns at this time. He also stated that they would need foam, chemical fire suppressant, to actually fight electrical fires. He also stated, based off of the solar panels being so close together, they probably need some sort of a utility vehicle. They would also need a trailer to haul that utility vehicle. We'd also have to get a complete uniform outfit to replace any damaged in line of duty or industrial solar site due to explosion or incident. If using lithium batteries, he sees them as being a whole nother issue, but he wasn't sure of that. Any special equipment needed to fight the fire in the industrial solar facility. As far as wind turbines, which frequently catch on fire statistically, they would need a new ladder truck for rescue of wind turbines. So what training will the department need? That was our question number 2. He says we're going to need to know how to cut the power to the facility. We're going to need to know how to use the special equipment and how much energy will be stored on the site. He also wants to know how will the energy be stored, how much the energy will be going through the panels on any given day. Well, how often are you going to need this? Well, he states that we'll need training before breaking ground, that's for sure. We'll need training on the site while being built to see how things come together and understand how the actual system works. We'll need training on site after it's finished as well. We'll need training twice a year going forward so that this will ensure that all volunteers are trained as they are joined for experienced members to review. This will keep everyone current. Any recommendations? And this was a solid one. He said, I'm just begging for transparency of the company. What do they expect the fire department to do? He doesn't know. Do they have a main shutoff at the gate? He doesn't know. Evacuation routes in case of a major fire. How far away do people need to evacuate if there's a major incident? Would we need to work with the Huntington EMA? Doesn't know. Roanoke Fire Department, Brandon Taylor, what equipment will the department need? He'd need to know if battery cells will be on site, and they need to know what panels are made of to help determine some of the equipment needs. He definitely says he needs special foam and he needs a foam trailer. What training will the department need? Well, he says I'm going to need to know how to handle the material that's on that site, how to extinguish the fire on that site, how do we use the foam and special equipment to fight that fire, how often? 2 times a year to keep everybody current. Any other recommendations? He says issue with staffing concern with lack of manpower is a major hurdle for him right now. How is the energy going to be stored? He needs to know that. Is this going to be an on-site or sent out over power lines? The best thing that he came up with is on number 5 is evacuation routes and if there is a major fire, what are the evacuation routes depend on what major event is located in prevailing winds. He needs to avoid emergency vehicles as they are entering the affected area. Would we work to evacuate people to US 24 or 224, depending on the location of the major event? So these are just some of the concerns that we have with our local fire department. I do know that people have said directly to our faces that we don't know what we're talking about. I promise you I do. And I'll go toe-to-toe with anybody that wants to talk about it on camera in front of everybody. If I don't know, I'll say I don't know, but I tend to find the information. I sold one of my businesses in 2014. That was a tech business. I had to do an intellectual property licensing deal for a couple of years to make that go through. I've dealt in the technology space and I understand the technology space. I currently use unheard of technology that most people don't even know is aware. I can tell you that the technology that we have, I've never seen anything like this on Google as I've done searches. If you guys would go and just Google used cars, what you're gonna find is you're gonna see 3 or 4 dealers at the top, and it's gonna say sponsored. This is basically elementary education that I'm kind of getting out here. But those are dealers that are paying to be at the top. They're paying to be at the top. What you'll notice if you Google buy here, pay here car dealers, you're actually gonna see dealers that don't even do buy here, pay here, but they're trying to get those leads, and that's how that works. But what I want to tell you is when it comes to solar, the first 5 pages are all pro solar stuff that are paid for. What they're doing is they're actually using their deep pockets from our government money, and they're just putting all of it. It is 1 page of sponsored, 1 page of sponsored, 1 page of sponsored. I went through it all. It is amazing of what the spend is. And what they're actually doing is putting landing pages. I encourage anybody to go home and just Google solar and just look what happens. It will be nothing but pro solar until you get to about 15 pages in where you can actually get real studies. So I'm gonna speed it up here for you, but this is an article that was done May 9th of 2018. And the headline reads, California becomes the first state to make solar panels mandatory. I think when we think of solar and renewables, I think California probably leads the way. But I brought another one here that's a little bit thicker. And this one was just done in November the 30th of 2023. It's actually a really good read. And the headline reads, New California rules are crushing the solar industry. Uh-oh. They've been in it longer than us, guys. There's probably a problem, and I promise you if you do the reading, I'll make sure you get those, but it is a problem. California is now realizing that the growth of these not only industrial solar panels, but residential solar panels, the life expectancy, they don't know where they're putting them. They've banned them in landfills at this particular time. Here's another interesting study, and I'll speed it up. Things may be changing in May of 2018. This is Time Magazine. Hero of the Environment and the Green Book Award winner wrote in Forbes that the problem of solar panel disposal will explode with full force in 2 or 3 decades and wreck the environment because it is a huge amount of waste which is not easy to recycle. This is a problem. This is an interesting study that you can read. It's Harvard Business Review. They're not into solar. This is completely independent. Solar energy is a rapidly growing market, which would be good news for the environment. Unfortunately, there's a catch. The replacement rate of solar panels is faster than expected. Given the current very high recycling costs, there is real danger to all. The International Renewable Energy Agency, which supports paddlefish. Its official projections assert that large amounts of annual waste are anticipated by the early 2030s and can total 78 million tons by the year of 2050. That's a staggering number. That's a staggering number. The solar trash is a great chart here to show you the solar trash of where it was supposed to be and actually where it's going. We're off the Richter scales. So this study was done by Harvard Business Review. I'll leave those as well. The next one's a pretty good one. The next one is actually a study done by Property Value Impact for commercial scale solar energy in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Not only did they go ahead and give us the study, they gave us the mathematical equation of how they got there. They gave us the entire map and all of it. But what I will tell you, at a minimum, it translates into a loss of $5,751 per household in any community. The most important thing, if we take anything away that I said here, I want you to understand this, that according to the Solar Alliance themselves, Still, in general, solar farms are required to be built at least 3 kilometers, 1.86 miles away from residential areas. It's a good idea to know if the operation is a large-scale farm or a small scale. Typically, it's recommended to live at least 1,640 feet from large-scale farms. The Solar Alliance is telling us that it's recommended for us to live 1,640 feet away from industrial solar. We'll settle for 1,500. Give us 1,500. 1,500, whether it be any renewables, whether it be wind turbines, whether it be solar, if that's what they're saying, I mean, we can trust them on that, I guess. The other thing is, we also had London School of Economics has undertaken the first major report earlier this year that those that live within 1.2 miles of large wind farms would have around an average of 13% knocked off the value of their homes. For those that are living 2.5 miles away from that, it goes down to 3%, which is pretty significant. But wind turbines, study says 13%. The one I want to go over here real quick, and this is Illinois. Illinois wants to keep old solar panels from piling up in landfills. So the new state law calls on a task force to consider banning the dumping of all solar panels in landfills while studying their recycling options to exit the state. Less than 2 decades before the state solar waste stream is expected to surge. These guys, they're ahead of the game because they see the problem. And they're saying you can't dump it here, it's got to go somewhere else. By the time we get into this and this decommission happens, most of us in this room will be dead. But what are we going to leave our kids? What are we going to leave our grandkids? Can anybody tell me if it were today where we would dump it? Do we have a landfill to dump this stuff today? Rumor says we don't. This is visible. You guys can go through this. This just basically tells you that unless used solar panels are safely disposed of, we're heading towards another environmental disaster of the greatest magnitude of mankind. I personally believe, and this is just me making speculation, but I think if Illinois is going that direction, California, I'd venture to say eventually there's going to be so many of these. There's going to be, back in 2020, there was a new solar industrial park going in every 60 seconds. I would think that we're going to end up hitting the wall of where these are going to go. And we can always trust our federal government, that's obvious. So do you think they're going to push it back down to the local level? I think so. I think they're going to push it to the local level and say, you created the problem, you deal with it. So in 30 years, 20 years, where do you guys propose we dump that? So one of the things, speaking of that, and the original blue ones that you guys have from Paddlefish that's here today, they said that they wanted to make sure that we knew that there were American parts are in there. Come on now. You can't fool us with that bracket or that bolt. What's interesting is that when they went on 21 Alive and they went on 15 and they went on 33, they went over there and they told us all, they said, look, we're only going to be taking up 0.05 or whatever the number was. I've got the math. I've done it backwards a couple of times of how much farmland they want to take up. But the interesting thing that they did is they actually spun that because they're only talking about one project. Why aren't we talking about all your projects? The reason that we don't talk about all projects is because, well, that'd be a bigger number. We want to focus on the small number to make everybody happy, right? But we'll focus on the big number, the 350 employees that we're really not going to hire. This last one I'll leave. Well, not the last. I got 2 more and I'm going to be done. But I want you guys to actually read this. It's great. This was actually an article from Cincinnati. I know it's really far away and it feels like it's a third world country, but this is a lot of the people that have been dealing with solar in their community that's already there. The headline remains, it reminds me of the Hunger Games. Rural residents complain about solar farm, and it goes through, and it'd be interesting for you to see all the pictures that they have in here of their great foliage. It actually reminds me of the Hunger Games. It's that we're back like the sector that's producing the energy of Cincinnati. They've snuck in, this is kind of interesting, that they said that they snuck in under the cloak of darkness before anybody realized what was going on. I know that some of elected officials and some volunteers on boards feel as it's our fault that we didn't know. I don't agree with that. It doesn't matter when we found out or how we found out. We found out and we showed up. We're, contrary to belief, political belief, we are not one-sided mongers. We are not one-sided issue people. There's more problems that we have in Huntington County, and I can assure you from here on out I will be involved. But we have to understand when we have meetings at 3 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning, a lot of us have kids. A lot of us, if you really look at the board, and I want you to understand the board, understand the politicians, and I want you to understand this. We chose to be in a different path. We chose to do a different career path. We voted for politicians to help us and to look out for our best interests. I have no doubt that they will. I have no doubt that they will. But please don't call us one-sided people because this is the one that's the most important to us right now. I can assure you as being one-sided, I am not. My wife currently serves on the board of Big Brothers Big Sisters. I personally donated to the POW, to the YMCA, to the Hope House. I could go on for days. I choose to support my community in just a different way because I'm raising 6 children and I'm running multiple businesses. But please, just because your meetings are at 8 in the morning doesn't mean that we don't care, we don't want to be there. And just know that going in. We do care. Here's another article you guys can just, I'll leave it with you about what happens with those solar panels again. So if we're an uneducated, uninformed mob, I want everybody to know that this is where we get our information. I mean, Yale, Harvard, from the Solar Alliance, that's where the data comes from. And so I'm asking for 1,500 feet on the ordinance from any property line. And that goes for wind. I think this needs to be, I think it really needs to come down and it needs to actually be a renewables ordinance in collaboration with wind and solar. Part of the things, and I know I'm jumping all around, but part of a couple of things that kind of bothered me is that the board members knew that, apparently I didn't know, but apparently the board members knew that the citizens of Huntington were angry about wind turbines, and they went through this process, and I don't know how many years ago that was, but it was a few years back, and it was, I guess it was terrible. I guess they had people showing up and yelling and screaming and everything. Did you not think that was going to happen with solar? Did we not think that was going to happen with solar? I mean, we're a firm believer in history repeats itself. So if we had it with wind, we're going to have it with solar, and I felt that we should have been, notified a little bit different. On all of the handouts, I did increase the font size because if you're like me, you need glasses, but it makes it better. I do want everyone to know is that we can stop with emails and phone calls for now. I think it's counterproductive. I think that everybody knows that how we feel about it. But there are too many unknowns of health, welfare, fire risk, quality of life, and financial risks with a fast-paced moving industry, and not enough research or data has been completed to gamble at any risk to citizens. These are honest fears. Looking at other Indiana County residents living with this adjacent to their homes, our fears are warranted. We do not want this. We are talking about industrial-sized solar fields. This is the kind of thing that tears communities apart, and this, we can all agree, that none of us want. Short-term money to the county may be the goal of some for this proposed project, but we believe that no amount of money is worth destroying the landscape and gambling on the welfare of Huntington County citizens. This is not a win-win for us. Sadly, approving this disastrous solar project could be the legacy attached to many names of the individuals who have made the industrial-sized energy facilities a reality in Huntington County. Any good that you may have done before will likely be forgotten. We ask that we work together as a community and that we make the necessary change to the local ordinance for wind and solar.